And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed. Go Tigers!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers. Yeah.
It's playoff. Keep going, Brace.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Welcome to Chasing the Trophy Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Sanders, coming at you for the Week 15 Waiver Wire Report. And, man, it is crunch time, guys. If you haven't started playoffs already, you're probably starting this week. I hope you made it. If you didn't, I'm sorry. Better luck next year. But, maybe there's something still in it for you in your league, even though, you might not have a chance to win it all. Some leagues, consolation prize, you're playing for draft picks for next year, something like that. But hopefully you're sitting in good standing. If not, and hopefully some of the information I can give you on this pod can be helpful for you next year. This year for the playoff run and, maybe get you in better standing for whatever is to come for the rest of the season and for next season, depending on the type of league you play in. But first and foremost, let's go ahead and open it up with a word of prayer. Then we're going to get to our sponsors. Then we'll jump right on into the meat and potatoes of the episode. Lord, just thank you for everything you continue to bless us with. Lord, just thank you for this game and this opportunity to fellowship and use this somehow as a tool to reach people, Lord, and just to kind of enjoy this game, but also know that you blessed us with this opportunity to do this and to talk about this, and that without you, none of this is possible, Lord. Just please be with Nora Kay. She continues to build her immune system up and kind of work back into what hopefully can be a normal childhood. After all the miracles you've worked for, just thank you for all those, Lord. Just same thing goes for Crew Tidwell as he gets back into his regular life, and thank you for the miracles and everything you've done for his family and continue to help and heal him, Lord. And just thank you for the life that Mama T had. The Nord family is without her, wouldn't have had the opportunity to know some of my good friends, the Nords, and one of my best friends growing up, Jacob Nord, and because through that lineage, as that being his grandmother, just thank you for her and her Christian leadership and her family, and just be with her family as they go through this time with her, Lord. And just also be with the victims and the relief workers of Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton, as that relief effort and rebuild and recovery is still underway, Lord. Just be with those people and help them turn to you and see the glory and the purpose in you, that you have purpose for all this, Lord. And then also be with Operation Christmas Child boxes as they go out, and just be with them as they make their way, and just bless each and every one. And I just pray that they bless and impact the child and the family of the child that open those boxes, Lord, and that it be exactly what they need to grow closer and maybe come to know you, Lord. And then just thank you for all these blessings and all these opportunities, and just be with all the families and the people as we come through, get close to the holiday season, Lord. As some people, it's a wonderful, joyous time to celebrate you and the birth of your son, Lord. But then also for some people who've lost loved ones, or just it just might not be such a joyous time of the year, but just help them turn and see the good and the joyfulness in you, Lord, and that you can just shine a light and be a hope for them in this time during the holidays, Lord. And just thank you for everything you continue to bless us with, and just please let us be a light and guide to bring people closer to you, and then a bright light to shine and show what you've done for us in our lives, Lord. It's your name we pray, God. Amen. All right, Lord, thank you for all that, and just thank you for all our sponsors that we have. And I'm going to go through them all again, because these sponsors have been with us through the whole season, and we just appreciate them. Big Reed BBQ started as a family recipe in 1986. Their mild flavors right on time, and their spicy's just enough heat. Owner Ken Reed and Director of Marketing Andre Leonard say that you can get their sauce at Doug Namona Farm and Feed, Time to Shine Detail, the Salty Brahma, the Equipment Store, and Amazon. Who does not have an Amazon account and order stuff on Amazon? And if you don't, Your wife probably does, and just get her to order you some, and then slap some of this good barbecue sauce on whatever you're cooking around the holidays or New Year's that's coming up, and try out their new pineapple habanero flavor. As I've heard great things, I'm looking forward to getting my hands on some and hopefully putting some on maybe a good pulled pork or some ribs around the holidays, some good baby back. So thank you, Big Reed, for sticking with us through this. As long as y'all been with us, y'all were our first sponsor, and we really appreciate that, guys. And then Mimi's Children's Boutique, it's located in Jonesboro. They fulfill all clothing needs for your little ones. Owners Melissa Johnson, Megan Harrell offer children and baby boutique brand clothing and accessories, vinyl print t-shirts, and so much more. You can find them on Main Street in Jonesboro from 10 to 6 Tuesday through Friday and 10 to 2 on Saturday. We appreciate y'all being our sponsor. Y'all, Christmas is right around the corner. Everybody, just send your wife there. If you're not going shopping for your kid, or maybe you're going shopping, maybe the woman's listening to this, who knows? But go check out Mimi's and get something for the kids, or maybe find something for yourself. Who knows? They got it. They got a little bit of everything there. We appreciate Melissa and Megan supporting us and being sponsors for our Dirty Boot Sports Network. Thank y'all. And then Crown Detailing offers mobile car detailing services, conveniently servicing your vehicle at your home or workplace. They provide various services for cars, boats, campers, and RVs, serving Ruston and the surrounding areas. Reserve your spot today, contacting them at 318-474-0859, or find them on Facebook by searching Crown Detailing. Guys, holiday season, you want your vehicle to look good whenever your family or relatives come in, or maybe you're going to their house. You want to be nice and shined up, looking right for going to that relative's house or wherever you're celebrating at. Or maybe you still got a parade coming up and your vehicle's going to be in there. Go holler at Crown Detailing. They'll get you fixed up. We appreciate them supporting us on the Dirty Boot Sports Network, and y'all go support them. And you get to touch with them on Facebook, or once again at 318-474-0859. Thank you, Crown Detailing. We appreciate y'all. And then so jumping right on in, bye weeks are over. Thank goodness, because this last bye week was rough. I know I lost pretty much all my matchups. Thank goodness I was pretty much already in the playoffs for all my leagues, but it did not help me with the seeding, unfortunately. But either way, bye weeks are over. We're in. Playoffs are starting. Everybody's back, which makes the waiver wire a little difficult because everybody's active now. There's nobody, on bye. So you're having to, especially the ones coming off bye, you're having to reevaluate those teams to try to see if any of those people that were going to be relevant after injuries or anything like that. But anyway, so for some reason, if by some miracle after all these injuries and all these bye weeks, if you're good, now is the time to be looking at running back handcuffs and high-end handcuffs at wide receiver, especially some of these teams that are in the playoffs and already clinched and they got their seed sewed up. I really don't think anybody's just completely set except for Kansas City's close. I think this week, if they win it, they might sew up their spot and their first round bye. But if not, then you just need to be looking at these guys now, because by this time, if you made the playoffs, you probably have a stud lineup that is your lineup going forward. Like, you're not pulling any of these guys out, regardless who they're playing. They're really, hopefully, you don't have any matchup based players at this point. And if you do, maybe there's one or two that are sitting on your bench, but you should have some positions to play with. Also, be looking at defenses this time of the year. Defenses can help you win matchups, good defensive matchups, and maybe stash one or two on the bench, like, extra coming up, playing in ahead for next week. And also, like I said, wide receiver handcuffs can be important. This time of the year, some stud wide receivers, like, say Philadelphia kind of gets it sewed up, they might start thinking about sitting Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, who have had some injury concerns and issues over the year. Same thing with, I could say that with Kansas City, they'll probably rest Kelsey. I don't know if they'll rest anybody else, but that would be Noah Gray would be a big benefactor in that sense. Their wide receivers are kind of a crapshoot as it is, so I don't know if that would apply to them, but you get what I'm saying. So be looking at those things going forward. And as far as injuries are concerned, Breece Hall ended up missing this past week with a knee injury. And I mean, they're not planning on shutting him down for the season, they're saying, but what's the point? I mean, he's your future running back still, keystone piece of your franchise. Like, why would you continue to play him through this knee injury when you got some guys you can evaluate in Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, who, both are splitting the workload, but have been effective. So anyway, Brees Hall missed this past week. I'd keep an eye on it. If he comes back and practices, then obviously he's going to come back and play. But if he tweaks that or anything, then he's done for the season, I guarantee you. So just kind of be keeping an eye on that for Brees Hall. And then we got Kenneth Walker, who ended up getting ruled out last week and who's had a pretty disappointing run after he was on fire early in the season, and then has been kind of disappointing. Ended up getting ruled out this past week with a calf injury, and he missed week 14. And I mean, we're going to see if he can make it back, but Zach Charbonnet sure did go off in his absence and maybe made a case to get some more work in. We'll see how that works out. But right now, let's see that Walker is getting more tests done on his calf, and they'll know more in the next few days, is what ESPN's reporting. That does not sound good to me. So I think there's a solid chance that we do not see Kenneth Walker on the field for his Green Bay matchup this week in Week 15. I'd fire up Zach Charbonnet. If you got Kenneth Walker, I would not count on him being back. That's just me. George Pickens come out of his last game, ended up coming out with a groin injury, and they've labeled it a grade 2 groin injury. Anytime you got more than a grade 1, it's never good, and they're calling it's a grade 2 hamstring strain. And originally a groin, which, if you know anything about the groin, like there's the hamstring attaches multiple places in that area. Anyway, long story short, hamstring injury labeled week to week, and Mike Tomlin confirmed Tuesday that he is unlikely to be available for Sunday's game against Philadelphia. Do not count on George Pickens, which that makes it hard for that offense already because they were struggling for playmakers as it was, and now George Pickens, their biggest playmaker, is out. We're going to talk about hopefully one option for them going forward. Let's see. There really weren't any other big injuries. Bucky Irving ended up leaving his contest with back tightness is what they're calling it. I don't know if they're going to say spasms, tightness. But honestly, Rachaad White looked great. I had him sitting on my bench in a league because Bucky Irving had kind of taken over the week before, 25 carries. And I was like, Rachaad White did okay, put up like 11 points, but I was like, I thought I had better upside on my bench. Well, then I sat him and it comes out, Rachaad White puts up like 24 points this past week. And we'll see if Bucky Irving, I'll watch that practice schedule. Honestly, if they're going to look like they're going to sew up the NFC South, they really don't have any reason to play Bucky Irving. So we'll keep an eye on that. Right now, the NFC South is such a big dumpster fire of a division anyway, with all the different teams. But Bucky Irving, somebody to keep an eye on, his practice schedule coming up. Not a great matchup at the Chargers, but could be somebody that they might end up trying to rest because they do have Sean Tucker and Rachaad White that can help them out tremendously. Luxury a lot of teams don't have. And then also Ladd McConkey ended up missing their matchup at Kansas City, which would have been a good one for him, but ended up missing that with a shoulder and knee injury, was inactive, but he's limited at practice pretty much all week last week. But I think they kind of held him out just so he could get fully healthy for this playoff push for him. This week he's getting Tampa Bay, which is a great matchup. Now, then he's got Denver, but then he's got New England and Las Vegas in week 18 if your playoffs go that far. So, Ladd McConkey, I'd be watching that practice schedule. I think he comes back this week for this matchup against Tampa Bay, which is a great one. So I think he'll be all right there. Speaking of that, though, his quarterback, Justin Herbert, ended up coming out of the game against the Chiefs with a left leg contusion. I don't think that's going to be anything to really worry about. He said he took a shot to the leg. He's in some pain, but he felt good. Anyway, he went back in the game. So they got him listed as questionable. I think he'll be fine. I wouldn't worry about that. Let's see. Isaac Guerendo comes in who was doing great. 15 for 78, 2 touchdowns, 2 catches for 50 yards, and foot sprain. was listed as a non-participant. We'll talk about this situation here in a little bit, but they play Thursday night against the Rams on a short week, and he was playing Sunday. Foot sprain, non-participant on Monday. Kyle Shanahan listed him as day-to-day, said we're going to see how the week goes to see if he's got a shot to play. So pretty much we know nothing. But if he's not able to go, we're going to talk about who might be his backup going forward. But that's Isaac Guerrero for San Francisco, who can't keep a healthy running back. Dalton Kincaid, who was inactive last week. I don't know how relevant that is for most people because he's been pretty disappointing this year also, but was inactive with that knee injury and has pretty much been inactive since week 10. He came out of week 10 and has not played since then. Honestly, the way they're cruising, there's no need for them to rush him back. We'll see. There's no new update as far as that goes. Let's see. Keon Coleman, somebody I did talk about in the past, who's been out since week 9, ended up being inactive. They did not update, but I mean, they're still winning, guys. Like, there's no reason for the Bills to bring back anybody in any hurry. So there's that. Let's see, Jonathan Brooks, somebody that we've talked about, having upside coming out, going forward, tore his ACL in the same knee that he just came back from. Will miss the remainder of the season, will go back, have that knee repaired again. Honestly, I would be shocked if he played at all next year. Only leagues you should be keeping Jonathan Brooks in are dynasty and keeper leagues, and not even keeper leagues because you're not going to keep him next year. So dynasty leagues going forward. That's sad. It sucks for Jonathan Brooks. He's real talented. But Chuba Hubbard owners, fire him up. He's your guy going forward. That should give you some peace about that situation. Will Dissly ended up playing last week and then suffered a shoulder injury and is expected to miss at least a couple of weeks. And I don't think this really helps anybody else as a tight end on this team, but I think it does help Quentin Johnston, who I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But that's Will Dissly. If you got him, go ahead and drop him because he's going to miss a couple weeks, and we'll see how that goes for him. Cedric Tillman, with that concussion, still sidelined since week 12, which is kind of crazy. So he's missed 2 weeks in a row with this concussion, and we'll see if he comes back. He was able to be a full participant in addition to getting cleared to have a chance to play, but eventually they held him out. So I don't know what's going on with that. So actually, hold on, I'm sorry. So Tillman remained in the concussion protocol as of Monday, and then he missed the last 2 games due to concussion. Will need to. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I misread that. Okay, so he still has not advanced to a full practice or gotten clearance from an independent neurologist, and it's been 2 weeks. That's not good, guys. I don't know. I mean, that if anything that's good, it's already been 2 weeks, so that means he's got to be getting close. But the fact that it's been 2 weeks, there must be some fair symptoms going on there with that. So that's Cedric Tillman. If he misses, Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy, when Tillman is out, have been and Njoku have been wonderful. So, if Tillman ends up missing again, fire up Elijah Moore big time. But that's going to pretty much close up our injury news and any updates, really. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's really any big news as far as any of that goes in football other than the injuries. And, really not much to talk about with that. I do know they said Jameis Winston will be the starter for the rest of the year is what Cleveland come out and said, which that's no surprise. But we're going to go and jump and that segues us right into our top waiver wire quarterback segment. And so we're going to jump right on in quarterbacks. Number 1 is going to be Jameis Winston for me, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, who you cannot run on, which Jameis doesn't care nothing about running. All he does is want to sling the rock for about 50 to 60 times a game and see how many touchdown passes he can throw to anybody, including the other team. But what that does lead to is major fantasy points. So Jameis Winston, I mean, he's pretty much ride or die for the rest of the season for people. I like him a lot going forward. I really think that Kansas City might be one of the tougher matchup. I mean, they're really not even a tough matchup for him. So he's got Kansas City, then he's got Cincinnati, Miami. None of those really bother you as a quarterback. Now Baltimore's the last game, but even them, they're still good at the run, not really the pass. So Jameis Winston's a starter going forward for the rest of the season for you. And even last week at Pittsburgh, put up 19 points against them. So I mean, you got to love that. So Jameis Winston, number one, rest of season, pick him up, start him. I mean, unless you got one of the studs like Lamar, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, one of those, Joe Burrow, one of those guys. Unless you got one of those, you're starting probably, Jameis Winston over them. And then you got Matthew Stafford at San Francisco, who ever since he's got Puka, Cup back, he has been at least 20 points every game. And not any different last week against Buffalo, a tough matchup. Went for 320 and 2 touchdowns for 25 points and 6-point per touchdown leagues. Now he's got San Francisco. He's got a Jets defense, which is a shell of itself. And I made the mistake last week saying I come out and said Tua was a sit because he was going up against the Jets. Well, I didn't realize that the Jets were missing their top 2 corners, their top safety, and then like 2 of their top linebackers, and then one of their defensive linemen. So like the Jets were pretty much starting their second string defense against Tua in this Dolphins offense. And that's my bad on that. If you sat Tua, if you looked at the graphic or, whatnot, and you sat Tua, that's my bad. I didn't see that all those people were out until after the games had already started. They were talking about it. I'm like, oh man. But anyway, and I would be willing to bet some of those guys are probably going to be out for the rest of the season, with them already being eliminated from the playoffs. So I like Matthew Stafford against the Jets in 2 weeks, and then he gets Arizona, kind of a tough matchup, but it's at the Rams, excuse me. And honestly, with Stafford having a healthy Nakua, a healthy Cup, and a healthy Kyron Williams, I don't think there's any bad matchup for Matthew Stafford the rest of the season. So, and especially with him probably being in a negative game script, with his defense not being that great, I like Stafford a lot going forward. Also, Aaron Rodgers, who is continuing to play, and I think, honestly, Rodgers is just out there trying to prove something. Last week, not a great matchup against Miami for him, especially, but went for 339, a touchdown. He's thrown the ball 39 times the last 2 weeks, almost 40 times the last 2 weeks. Great to see, especially with his weapons. Now he gets the worst pass defense in the NFL in Jacksonville, at Jacksonville. So out of the cold, pretty solid neutral site being in Jacksonville because they won't have anybody at the game. Decent weather probably. I think you got to fire up Aaron Rodgers at Jacksonville, look for him to go for 300 and probably 3 touchdowns. And that's my number 3. And number 4 is going to be Cooper Rush, honestly, because their Cowboys have been in a negative game script. He's got weapons. Has really not looked very sharp, did not look sharp at all against Cincinnati on Monday Night Football last night, but still put up 17 fantasy points in a 6-point per touchdown game. He has that potential to go for 20 plus in a good matchup. And guess what? He gets 2 good matchups back to back at Carolina and then at home against Tampa Bay. Both great matchups for quarterbacks. And I don't think it's out of the realm for him to put up some good solid points for you over the next couple of weeks. And that's Cooper Rush. He's my number 4 quarterback for the waiver wire. And then we're going to move right on into our running backs. And Patrick Taylor is going to be number 1 just because we know that Kyle Shanahan likes a solid RB1, like he feeds the ball to his top running back. And if Garindo is out, Patrick Taylor is a must start as an RB2 at least, going up against the Rams at home in a must-win game for San Francisco. And Patrick Taylor looks good. I mean, he's a good pass catcher out of the backfield. He had some good runs. He didn't catch any passes last game, but he had some good run for average. And they like to hand their ball to their running back in the goal line. So another big thing for them is, and they got a great run blocking offensive line, as we've seen all year with whoever is in the backfield for them. So if Garindo's out, Patrick Taylor is a must start, and I think you got to have him as your number 1 pickup just because of that, and especially on a short week with Garindo with that foot injury, not practicing on Monday. I think Patrick Taylor's got to be your number 1 pickup at running back. Number 2 is going to be Tank Bigsby, who looked good last week, got all the carries out of the backfield, got all the goal line work, didn't get many of the catches. That was all Travis Etienne, but I expect them to lean on the run with Lawrence being out the rest of the year. Mac Jones under center. I think they're going to lean on the run. He gets kind of normally a tough matchup against the Jets this week at home in Jacksonville. But like I just told you earlier, the Jets defense is a shell of itself. And Tank Bigsby is running good. He leads the league in yards after contact for, I think it was like around 50 something rushes or something like that. Leads the league in yards after contact. Most people don't know that, but that's an excellent stat for running backs, especially going up against good defenses. That means he's getting touched or hit, and he's still getting yardage after the catch. So, I mean, after the run. So, like Tank Bigsby, number 3 is going to be Jaleel McLaughlin. Honestly, this is a gut call for myself. Not a lot of analysts are all. I mean, I've had a couple of them mention his name, but not a lot of analysts feel comfortable with this because we have seen. We've seen Sean Payton just kind of play the hot hand. Well, here lately, Jaleel McLaughlin was the hot hand for 2 games in a row before their bye. And I think that continues after their bye. And he gets a good matchup against Indianapolis. And the way Denver's playing, if they kind of start to clinch, he could be starting to save Javonte Williams a little bit, with the little bit more experienced runner for that. But also, like, McLaughlin's great in catching the pass, and we haven't seen him do a lot of that this year. And Javonte Williams is, he's been good to an extent when he gets the ball, but he is not averaged near what Jaleel McLaughlin has when he was his handoffs. Like the last 2 games before, Jaleel McLaughlin was averaging 6 yards a carry. And we've seen him bust off big runs after big runs, and that was against Cleveland. Was one of those matchups as a tough run defense. I mean, I just got this feeling that McLaughlin is about to get the ball a little bit more, and he's going to be very fantasy relevant going up against a terrible run defense in Indianapolis Colts at home. So give me Jaleel McLaughlin. I think he's number 3, especially for this week. Number 4 is going to be Sincere McCormick, and you're probably like, McCormick, like McCormick Spices? No, Sincere McCormick, the running back for the Las Vegas Raiders now, who are pretty much seeing what they got in this guy. He's getting kind of a tough matchup at home against Atlanta, but the last 2 weeks he's had 2 tough matchups. Kansas City, 12 for 64 average, 5 yards a carry, and then got 2 catches just for 1 yard, but still 2 catches, which means they're throwing the ball to him. And then last week at Tampa Bay, which is not a great place to run. They're normally somebody you pass the ball more, 15 for 78, averaged 5 yards a carry again, 2 catches for 11 yards. Now he's getting Atlanta. I mean, I think it's just one of those things where he's going to get you around 10 fantasy points if he doesn't get a touchdown. If he does, he's going to get you around 16, 17, and you're looking at an RB2 there. And he's getting the opportunity for him. They're going to evaluate him going forward to see if he's somebody they bring back next year, I think. And that's Sincere McCormick, somebody I really like. Somebody that is, if they're possibly out there, Jaylen Warren, somebody that I think that he's not on this list technically, but somebody that if he's out there, man, I think you fire him up with this injury to George Pickens. I think they're going to look to get the ball in his hands more in the passing game, and that could be huge for him. Sorry, I just want to throw that out there because I happened to see his name when I was scrolling through on the player profiles. And then, but number 5 for me on this list is going to be Kamani Vidal. Somebody that they're slowly bringing along in Los Angeles. Got 8 carries last week for only 34 yards, but way better than Gus Edwards, 1.5 to 2 yards per average. Vidal averaged 4.4, but the thing that Vidal does best is catch the ball. Well, Edwards nor Vidal caught any passes last week, and somebody's going to catch passes out of this backfield, and I just feel like it's going to be Vidal, and when he starts catching those passes, he's going to do something with them. This week, he's playing at home against Tampa Bay, who's not a great defender against the pass-catching running backs. I think this could be a Vidal game that we see kind of break out a little bit. They are giving Edwards the ball in the end, like in the goal line work. So, I mean, it's kind of a bummer for that, but man, I feel like Vidal is the more talented running back, and eventually he's gonna get more work. And so I got to leave him on this list at number 5, and that's going to close out our running backs. And then we're going to jump right on into our wide receivers because I'm trying to roll through this for you guys to make it quick. Number 1 is going to be Adam Thielen. I told you about him last week. And I'll be straight honest with you. I didn't start him in one league, start him in another. Should have started him in both because he came out, balled out against a tough matchup. Against Philadelphia. Went 11 targets, 9 catches for 102 yards. I mean, the dude still got it. Honestly, hope he becomes a free agent. Hope he goes to the Saints and helps us out some next year because Lord knows we need help with any wide receiver we can get. I mean, he's an injury risk, but hey, I mean, the dude has went for 8 or 9 catches for 100 yards last 2 weeks with a touchdown at one of them. This week he gets Dallas at home. I mean, you almost can't ask for a better matchup than Dallas at home, one of the worst pass defenses in the league. Looks like he's got something to prove down the stretch. Also, just a little bit. So he has Dallas this week at home. Then he gets Arizona at home. Then he gets Tampa Bay at Tampa Bay. Then he gets Atlanta at Atlanta. None of those scare you as a pass catcher. And Bryce Young is starting to come along as a passer, and he is zoned in on Adam Thielen, and I'm here for it. And the crazy thing is Adam Thielen's only owned in 38% of fantasy leagues. Get out there, pick him up. Great start at flex for people going forward. Then number 2's got to be Elijah Moore, playing at home against Kansas City, only owned in 13.4% of fantasy leagues. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Jameis Winston's throwing the ball 60 times a game, and I'm there for it. I mean, I will say that he does take a hit if I take that back. He's owned in 23.5% of fantasy leagues, not that many, but either way, or, whatever. But still, getting a fair amount of targets when they throw the ball. Last week was a tough week at Pittsburgh, and the week before was another tough one against Pittsburgh, but at Denver, 14 targets, 8 catches for 111 yards. We all seen that game. Went off. I feel like it's another one of those games against Kansas City at home. Love me some Elijah Moore. And then right behind him, same thing with Cedric Tillman. If Tillman plays, now I will say, if Tillman doesn't play, Moore gets a big boost. He's right up there with Adam Thielen for me. If Tillman plays, I like both of them. I probably like Tillman a little bit more just because he seemed to show a better rapport, a better connection with Jameis Winston. But Jameis Winston's throwing that ball 50-plus times, and I think he can support 3 wide receivers and probably Njoku with that because these guys have caught the ball, they've gotten open, and they've all looked good and can be solid flex plays, and Jerry Jeudy's looking like a wide receiver too. Cedric Tillman and Elijah Moore look like flex play. Njoku looks like a top 5 tight end. I mean, I want in on this Cleveland offense going down the stretch. And the crazy thing is all these guys are available. Tillman's owned in 49% of fantasy leagues. So like Moore, like Tillman, those are 2 guys I want to go after. Number 4 has got to be Christian Watson for me. I mean, honestly, I feel like I'm hitting the roulette table every time I go with this guy. Owned in 57.4% of leagues at Seattle, but you cannot ignore the volume he got last week. Coming in, it's been like hit or miss. He gets these big plays, but if he gets 6, 7 targets, 1 or 2 of them is going to be a big play. Well, you know what? Last week, 7 targets, 4 catches for 114 yards against a not great Detroit secondary. But guess what? Now he gets a not great Seattle secondary. And I think we could see more of the same. I think it does help Romeo Doubs being out. I don't know if Romeo Doubs is coming back. He was ruled out for Thursday's game. He had that concussion. There's been no update on if he's coming back or not. But I mean, Christian Watson, man, if he gets, he's just a big play waiting to happen. If you're in a boom or bust situation and you need something big from like you need a 20, 30-point game, he's got a solid chance for that. And he's only on 57% leagues at Seattle. Definitely somebody I'm looking at for that game. And then even after that game, getting New Orleans at home in Green Bay. Honestly, great matchup there because New Orleans defense and secondaries, I mean, especially against big plays, not been that great. So, just like Christian Watson, number 5 is going to be Quentin Johnston for the same reason I told you earlier. Will Dissly's out. I think they're going to use Quentin Johnston more in those type of catches in those range. Super explosive. Last week, Ladd McConkey was out. He was not the leading target with Ladd McConkey out. Josh Palmer was, but we can't argue that Quentin Johnston is by far the most explosive player on that team as far as big plays. I mean, if you haven't seen him play, the dude is extremely fast and explosive. He's essentially Christian Watson on the Chargers. It does not take much, but you give him 6, 7, 8 targets, he's going to probably either score a touchdown or bust one. But last week, 7 targets, 5 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown. You like that? I feel like he's the new Will Dissly. Great matchup this week at home against Tampa Bay. Not a great secondary. If Lad McConkey ends up missing again for some reason, I think there's a solid chance that Quentin Johnston, could give you some wide receiver 2 production in a game that they're probably going to be throwing the ball a little bit more because Tampa Bay has a better run defense than they do a pass defense. So that's Quentin Johnston, number 5. Number 6 is going to be Ray McLeod. That's right, old Ray. I think we've talked about him a couple times on this show, but it's been a while. Honestly, last week just come out and showed some production, and he's had a couple weeks in a row now where Kirk Cousins is looking for him. Had 6 targets for 2 weeks in a row before their bye, after their bye. Then last week at Minnesota, 11 targets, 8 catches for 98 yards, and then 1 carry. He normally gets a carry here and there for a chance to bust it because he's super explosive and athletic. Honestly, you just can't deny that if they're in a pass-heavy game script, he's getting the ball at least 6-7 times now. And I think that's something going to be at Las Vegas. I don't know if they're going to be a negative game script for that. But Las Vegas is fairly decent against the pass. And what that tells me is their better defenders are going to be on Drake London and Darnell Mooney. And Kirk Cousins ain't afraid to look to Ray McLeod and be like, here you go, Ray, do something with it. And, man, I think that if you're in a bind, you had some injuries, maybe, right here before the games, if you need some help, Ray could be a flex play for you. And that's at Las Vegas. So like him a lot there. And that's going to close out our wide receiver section. And we're going to roll right on into our tight end section. And number 1 is going to be Pat Freiermuth, mainly because George Pickens is gone, and we have no idea who that next top receiver is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be Van Jefferson. I don't know if it's going to be Calvin Austin. I don't know if it's going to be Mike Williams. Honestly, none of them have had hardly any production. The next best pass catchers are Freiermuth and Jalen Warren. And I really think, hey, look, if they were already their best pass catchers behind George Pickens, why not their production go up as well? I think that's a solid chance that happens. We seen Pat Freiermuth last week, just 3 targets, 3 catches, but 48 yards with a touchdown. The week before had a touchdown. I think that Russell Wilson's going to him a lot, the red zone. He had 7 targets last week, though, and then week before last. So, Russell Wilson's not opposed to throwing the ball. But I think with George Pickens out, I think we could see a boost in Freiermuth's production for sure. And he's my number 1 because really this offense has looked better than most of these other offenses of these tight ends that we got listed on here. I think he's going to get the best chance at good production for you. And he's only owned in 48.2% fantasy leagues. Tougher matchup against Philadelphia, but they've got to go somewhere with the ball, and I think Pat Freiermuth could be that place. Number 2 for him is going to be Juwan Johnson. You want to talk about a team that ain't got nobody to catch the ball. My goodness, the Saints. Losing people left and right. Taysom Hill done for the season with that torn ACL. Juwan Johnson looked pretty good last week. Yes, I know we lost Derek Carr. Don't get me wrong. That's a bummer, but Jake Haener is a very capable pocket passer. If they go with Jake Haener, I feel very comfortable starting Juwan Johnson, who's gotten 7 targets 2 weeks ago, 5 targets this week, 4 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown, put up 15 points. Honestly, if Haener plays, I like him a lot. Now, Spencer Rattler, on the other hand, has not shown me he's that great, but he does scramble, create open opportunities. And Juwan Johnson was a wide receiver in the past, and we've been seeing him line up as a wide receiver some. And you got to love that coming from a tight end position. I think he's number 2, almost could be number 1 if Pittsburgh had anybody else to throw the ball to, but they don't. But yep, Juwan Johnson owning 13.9% fantasy leagues and a decent, not great, but decent matchup against Washington, who they're definitely going to be a negative game script against because Washington's offense is outstanding. And so I like Juwan Johnson a lot. And honestly, I like him going forward for the rest of the season, no matter what the matchup is, because he's the only one of their few pass catching options they have. Number 3 for me is going to be Grant Calcaterra. That's right, Grant, not Grant from Jurassic Park, Grant Calcaterra from the Philadelphia Eagles. And owned in 1.7% of fantasy leagues, going up against Pittsburgh at home this week. And you're probably like, man, yeah, I mentioned that guy last week on this pod because I knew Dallas Goedert was getting put on IR, going to be out. And sure enough, Calcaterra comes out. Only 3 targets, but 3 catches for 16 yards and a touchdown. Yes, that means 10 fantasy points, which means he was a top 10 tight end. That's right. So, but 3 targets, 3 catches, not a lot. But what you can count on is if they start to sit some of their pass catchers in Devontae Smith and AJ Brown as they get close to get close to clinching the playoff and seeding down the stretch, I can bet you Grant Calcaterra will probably be fairly integral in that pass catching down the stretch. This week, a pretty solid matchup because it's hard to pass the ball and run the ball against Pittsburgh, but where their weakness is against the tight end, they're 18th in the league against the tight end as far as fantasy points. And then just last week gave up 19 fantasy points to Njoku, 8 for 56 and a touchdown. Week before against Cincinnati, gave up 19 fantasy points against them. So I really think this is going to be a way that Philadelphia will attack this Pittsburgh defense with their tight end. So I think that speaks great news for Grant Calcaterra, only owned in 1.7% fantasy leagues. Number 4 is going to be Daniel Bellinger, another benefactor of an injury casualty. And as Theo Johnson was ruled out for the rest of the year with that foot injury, now we have Daniel Bellinger, who we have seen be a very good, serviceable tight end in the past. And this past week, 7 targets, 5 catches for 45 yards. Whether it's Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito, whichever one it is, we have seen backup quarterbacks in this New York Giants system throw to their tight ends fairly heavily, and I don't think that changes. I think Bellinger just being the tight end there is going to give him opportunity. Not great last week, but this week he's getting Baltimore, which is another defense that you attack with your tight end. 22nd in the league against the tight end. Gave up 12 points to to Dallas Goedert before he got hurt week 13. Week 10 gave up 24 points to, I think it was Mike Gesicki for 11 catches for 72 and a touchdown. Like, they are very vulnerable to tight ends. Daniel Bellinger, I think, has a solid chance to be productive in this offense with Theo Johnson on the IR. So somebody I'd look at deep. He's owned in 0.1% fantasy leagues. I mean, deep leagues. And honestly, I probably should have swapped these next two. Noah Gray, only reason I didn't is because Bellinger is the starter, but Noah Gray probably has a better chance at more production. You could probably throw him in there at 4, Bellinger at 5, either one. But Noah Gray for Kansas City, 12.2% of fantasy leagues, going to be at Cleveland this week. Honestly, there's a lot of upside here because if they start to sit Kelsey more, we're going to see a big boost in Gray because he's played a lot like Travis Kelsey and looked great. Honestly, at least 4 targets in the last 4 weeks and at least 5 in 3 of the last 4. 5 targets last week, 4 catches for 26 yards. No touchdown, but I mean, he had a stretch there. We had 4 touchdowns in 2 games, and then now he's at Cleveland. We've seen Mahomes look at him and go to him consistently. They're running 2 tight end sets a lot just because of their wide receiver woes there in Kansas City. So I like Noah Gray. If you're in a bind at tight end at Cleveland, another team that you attack with the tight end, who has given up a lot of fantasy points. They gave up 14 to Freiermuth or the Pittsburgh tight ends last week. Honestly, in New Orleans, which I mean, that's kind of skewed, but we've seen him give up 130 yards to Taysom Hill, who is a tight end, but we know he got those through all different avenues. But they also gave up 14 fantasy points to Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago, and now they get Kelsey and Gray, and we've seen Gray be very, very good with Patrick Mahomes, so I like him a lot. Pretty much going forward for the rest of the season, regardless of who they're playing, just for the fact that I think as they get closer to clinching and tying everything up, we're going to see more Gray, less Kelsey. They get Houston, then they get Pittsburgh, then they get Denver. Tough matchups on paper, but I mean, all these teams, normally the way you attack them is going to be through the tight end with these stud defenses like this. So I like Noah Gray going forward. And that's going to close out our tight ends. And then streaming defenses. I like Baltimore at the Giants. The Giants quarterback room is I take that back. It's almost as bad as New Orleans. It's not quite as bad because Drew Lock and Smith and Tommy DeVito have played before. I mean, Hayner has, but Radler, just a rookie. So they're not quite as bad as in New Orleans, but right there. Baltimore's owned in 48.4% of fantasy leagues, going at the Giants. But Baltimore's defense looked good right before their bye. Now they're healthy. They're going to control the ball. They're with Derrick Henry. They're looking to sew up their playoff position and seeding. So I like Baltimore a lot this week. Number one for me. Number two is going to be Arizona. I know they let me down last week. -3 fantasy points against Seattle. Honestly, Geno just looked good. And they did not create any turnovers like they have been. Well, now they get New England at home. And New England has been Drake May has been fairly solid as a rookie, but he turns the ball over a fair amount, let's be honest. And they do not have a lot of weapons. Their offense is not that great, even though May does produce as a quarterback. That's just because of the type of quarterback he is. But Arizona at home against New England, they're owned in 59% fantasy leagues, but I'm going to fire them up again and give them another chance because I have a feeling that they're going to try to redeem themselves after last week. And I look for them to be able to do that against New England at home. And then last but certainly not least, Washington at New Orleans. Like I just talked about, the Giants, they're in a bad situation, but Washington's defense isn't as good as Baltimore's, but it's not bad. And they're going up against the worst quarterback room in the league, in my opinion now. So in that's sad to say because I'm a big Saints fan, as most of you know. But Washington at New Orleans, I think Washington's defense gets after the quarterback. I think Washington's offense controls the ball. I really think it's going to be a rough watch for Saints fans this weekend, and I think Washington controls it. And we could be looking at a return of Marshawn Lattimore looking to show out in New Orleans. So there's always that. So that's the buys. That's the buys. That's the streaming defenses that I've got this week. Streaming or pickups a kicker. Will Reichard is back from Minnesota. Came back last week. I told you to pick him up if you didn't. He's back, only owned in 14.6% of fantasy leagues. Going to be at home against Chicago, which is a great matchup for him. Minnesota's moving the ball well. He's going to get plenty of opportunity in a dome. Will Lutz is going to be number 2. Top 6. I think he's number 5 kicker in fantasy at home against a great opportunity in Indianapolis, who allows teams to move the ball a fair amount. He's only owned in 17.1% fantasy leagues. I think Will Lutz is somebody you hang on to rest of season. And then Jason Sanders for the Miami Dolphins, owned in 49.5% of fantasy leagues, going to be at Houston, kicking in that dome. I think this is a great, because Houston's defense is solid, especially in the red zone, but Miami moves the ball well. So I think that's going to create plenty of opportunities for Jason Sanders to get in a dome. And he's kicked the ball very good this year. I think he's a top 10 option at kicker also so far this year. So those are my 3 kickers that, if you're looking for one, maybe yours got hurt, maybe yours just ain't kicking it. Those are some options for you going forward. And that's going to close out our week 15 waiver wire episode. We appreciate everybody listening. Thank you for, listening, subscribe. Please go like, subscribe, download, share the podcast, give us some feedback. Let us know what you want to hear more of, what you don't want to hear more of. All the things, guys. We appreciate everybody. It's been a good season. It's not over yet. Now it's time for the playoff push. We're going to keep trying to give you some options. We're going to keep trying to get our start, sit, sleep graphic out there on Facebook. We just haven't been able to get that pod out consistently, but the graphics are going up on Facebook for waivers and start, sit, sleep. So be looking for that. Go out, support our sponsors, Big Reed BBQ, Mimi's Children's Boutique, Crown Detailing. We thank them. Y'all go support them if you can, especially around the holiday season, and be with our prayer requests that we talked about also. And we just appreciate everybody. Y'all like, subscribe, all the things on your podcast application of choice. Thank y'all. Y'all keep chasing that trophy. We'll come at you on week 16.
This ain't how it's supposed to be. It should be just you and me. I feel